Hi there. My name is Deidre Kennedy, and I'm here for the Pacifica Historical Society, and tonight's hostess of the show, Footprints of Pacifica. We get together every week to discover and explore the lure and the lore of lovely Pacifica, its character, and its characters. The focus of tonight's show is the story of the amazing Youngdahl family. I would like to introduce our guests tonight, Doretta Youngdahl, her daughter Lynn, and her other daughter Elena. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yes. Let's start at the very beginning, Doretta. How did you and Herbert meet?
We went to junior high school and went to senior high school.
Was that here in California?
No, in Sioux City, Iowa, where we were both raised. And then after 5 years we married, and we were married 16 and a half years. Yeah.
My.
Yeah.
That's a lovely, lovely story in itself. When did you come to California?
Let's see, in 1954. Right. Because of Elena's eye condition, we were sent out for a specialist here in California. And then we were stationed at the Presidio for 4 years, before we went to Germany for another 3.
Oh my, so you've lived all over the world.
Just about.
Yes.
Well, at least traveled there,
Well, yes.
because we were eligible to Space A on the Air Force planes.
Excellent.
It wasn't always the easiest way to go. You had to carry your own luggage and, get your currency and get your visas and all that, but
No peanuts and cocktails.
I know, my husband was that type.
Okay.
Go, go, go.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I know, when did you move to Pacifica?
1961, when we
Okay.
came back from Germany and we were retiring.
I see.
Now, we had come out when we lived in the Presidio, to tell you the truth, and I looked at this town, I said, who in their right mind would want to live in that town? But, after 3 years in Germany, things changed down here.
Oh, yes.
And so we were lucky to get a nice home up there on Crespi Drive.
It's a beautiful home. I so enjoyed your garden the other day. Just a lovely home. So you moved to Pacifica, and what local schools did you attend, Lynn?
I graduated from Terra Nova. I was the first, we had an option. We could be the first graduating class at Oceana, or we could stay at Terra Nova. And we decided that they all wanted to stay with the people they knew, or they could split.
Sure.
And decided to stay there. So I was the first graduating class, second graduating class in Terra Nova. It took me 10 years to get through college. So I went to College of San Mateo, Skyline, and a lot of them down in San Jose and Cupertino.
Sure.
But after 10 years, I finally graduated from the same college that my father had.
Well done.
And in San Francisco State.
Yes. Yes, so in those days, as I remember, Terra Nova did not have its second story. It was only a one-story school.
That was true, and the thing that amazed me most was I had been in schools in Germany for 3 years and came home and went to Balboa in San Francisco because that's where my cousins went until we came to Pacifica. And to go down there and find out we had a smoking lot. That was unheard of. I mean, just, hey, and I wasn't allowed to smoke. And so I would go out to the smoking lot and I'd look up on Terra Nova and see our house at the top and think, gee, I hope my mom's at work. I could just see her with her binoculars down there watching me smoke.
Right. Well, yeah. We all have high school stories.
We do. We do.
Yes, we do. Elena and I were very close in high school. We were only 1 year apart.
Right.
And I remember when you came to town, and it was just, it was so fun. We also attended this same church, and we just had buckets of fun together. Went on all kinds of outings, and it was a grand time.
It was a grand time, yeah.
Yes.
And I think the thing I liked most about it is I was Terra Nova's first blind student. So up until my second year when Chris Trombley, the other blind gentleman, joined us. But for the first year, I basically ran the school. Because, they'd never had a blind student before, so when I would tell them, well, I have to study in the library, And I have to, they'd say, oh, okay, all right. Well, it was great. I loved it.
And what we always loved about, and still do about Elena, is she's not shy.
Right.
That's true.
That's very
And
true.
I remember you're having a cane then in those days.
I did have a cane.
Before you had a dog.
It took me, I applied for a guide dog, well, even when I was a senior in high school, that
remember.
first summer, applied for a guide dog. But for some reason, every time I'd get put into a class or something, I'd think twice about it. And I kept canceling. And I didn't go get my first dog until I was 34 years old.
My.
And the only reason I went to get the dog is that one morning I woke up and I told my kids we were going to be going shopping that day, and they said no, they'd made other plans, so I'd have to go by myself. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go get me a dog then.
That's
And
right.
That's what I did.
So
Yeah.
you've never gone anyplace by yourself again?
That's right. That's true. I was back in '83, and this is my fourth dog. So
Oh,
it's
Tahoe?
worked well.
Tahoe's just precious. She's down here having a little nap.
Yeah.
Right, resting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've talked about the local schools, about how you came to Pacifica, and what do you remember about our schools back then, Lynn?
Aside from the smoking lot.
Right.
I'm not so much for the school, but I was grossly overweight then, and they went to work, so I had to walk down to school, down Terra Nova,
Yeah.
which was fine, but come up. Oh my God. And the
Agony.
first day I came home from school and I walked in the door and my mother said, I thought she was going to have a heart attack. I said,
That's a steep hill.
it was a very steep hill back then.
Yes.
I remember it being a very nice school. And one day I was out in the smoking lot and this girl came up and said to me, hi, Lindia. And that's my real name.
Yes.
And who knows me by that name? And it was a girl and her sister. They also had been in school with me in Germany.
Oh,
So
my.
it's a really small world.
Very small
Yeah.
world. Yes, I should say so. Elena, what do you remember about Terra Nova? This is a history show, you know.
Right.
So we can talk
Yeah,
about.
I remember when the very first day I went to school, I had spent my whole junior high at the School for the Blind in Berkeley, which was kind of a sheltered environment, very set up for quote unquote blind children. And I remember my first day at school being just petrified because all of a sudden I'm amongst all these sighted peers and sighted kids, and none of the books were going to be in Braille, and
Wow.
it was, I remember just being scared to death. And I remember that we had a little boy up the street, little Joey, and he went with me for my first class and would be there for my first day. And he'd be standing there when I'd come out and he'd help me get to my next class. But my dad, who was an orientation and mobility instructor and taught white cane, he had taken me down to Terra Nova the week before school started and taught me the
great.
school layout. And we had my class schedule.
Good.
So we had some idea of, where I needed to go from here to there. But I think one of the things that happened was I used to take a cab. The district made me take a cab to and from school, and they wouldn't let me walk it because I guess they were liable. And I remember coming up the stairs one day and I had all these Braille books in my hand and I went flying up. I was going to go to the gym. I had an 8 o'clock PE class in the morning. Come flying through there, and there was this great big trash can, and I tripped and I almost fell in the trash can. And that was bad enough by itself, but the whole boys class, gymnasium class, was there. I was so embarrassed because I was just a kid.
Yeah.
And I wasn't used to being around all these people that could see
teen.
me, and especially boys.
Yeah.
So
Young teen girls have it rough.
yeah, but I mean, everybody was just so kind to me, and
Yes.
it turned out so well. And I made some really, as you know, we were all involved in the Youth for Christ on campus, and
Yes.
and I just adopted this family of. I was the mother, and
Yeah.
you guys were my kids.
That's
I remember. And even up until the day I graduated, and how I was going to maneuver the graduation, and yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Just a very receptive school.
Good times. And we're just chatting before the show started. We were chatting. We're going to celebrate our 50th anniversary coming up. Our 50th anniversary of our graduation, which is amazing.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Well, on to some of the really special significance for your family. You've just, your natural storytellers. Herbert and Doretta and all the Youngdahls are just these natural storytellers, and you also possess what I call a servant's heart. And the Servant's Heart has resulted in so many
Sit down,
hours
Tahoe.
of
Down.
volunteering. And it's our community and in the northern Sacramento, Folsom community as well. And Lynn, could you tell me a little about the volunteering work you do?
Yes, I am a member of the American Legion Auxiliary of Pacifica, and not so much recently, but in past years, when they would give a fashion show, I would come down and do all their table decorating and all of their background scenes and what have you. I'm very much into. In my professional life, I was always in general management of food service operations, so it all comes naturally to me.
Yes.
So even now, we have a party once a month at the senior center, 80 to 90 people. I always go and do all the decorating, the planning, the games. I'm a member of, I'm on the board of our local library. I do a lot of volunteering at the library as well as Friends of the Library, a lot with the senior centers. I help a lot with the California Council of the Blind. I am one of the few local people, a sighted member, a card-carrying member. And last year when we did our fundraiser, we did a Mutt Strut walk. And on this dog here who won't behave,
Tahoe.
she wants her time, I was
Yes.
able to get donations of $2,745.
Marvelous.
Which made Tahoe for 5 years in a row top dog.
Top dog,
donation
Tahoe.
dog. And Elena told me this past year, she said, I really don't have the time to do this. Do you want to take over? So I had a lot of pressure, 4 years.
Yes.
And we came out top dog again.
Oh.
So
That's marvelous. Oh, good news. Elena, tell me a little about your volunteering work.
I don't do a lot of volunteering work right now because I run my own business. I'm self-employed. My own business is called Equal Access, and I started it right after the passage of the ADA because I knew the demand for Braille would be great, and I've turned out to be correct. I do Braille menus and bus schedules and anywhere in my community that we need Braille. But as a volunteer, I also teach Braille. I have Braille students. I'm also very involved in my church, and I just joined about a year ago a women's General Federation of Women's Clubs of Citrus Heights. And so we're doing fundraising to support different causes in our own little Citrus Heights, which is a very small suburb outside of Sacramento.
Right, over there by Mather Air Force Base, right?
Right,
Yeah.
not too far,
Right.
actually.
I had lived for a time when I was going to Davis up in that area.
Yeah,
Right.
Davis.
So Elena's also worked on a book called 12 Steps to Living with Low Vision. And this is in its reprint. And-
It's reprint,
And revising, really.
Right. I had worked with the Department of Rehab, my first real job, after I got out of college, and had done a lot of counseling and worked with a lot of newly visually impaired and blind people. And I don't think people realize, I saw a statistic just recently from the American Council of the Blind that 21 million adults in our nation suffer from a visual impairment. And I'd say 50% of our population over 55 is known to have some visual problem. The eyes were just never meant to survive 100 years or 120 years, and especially the way we use them today. Everything is visual, the iPads, the iPhone, everything. And a lot of people with age macular degeneration, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers will relate to that,
Indeed.
as well as glaucoma and diabetes, eventually impacts the visual ability. And I was doing a lot of counseling, and it seemed to me that every home I'd go into or every client and I would talk to, there seemed to be this constant theme, and I always seemed to be dealing with the same issues as I went from client to client. And I kept thinking, somebody should write a book.
Somebody should.
And
And here it is.
Yeah. And it needs to be in layman terms, because I think all too often ophthalmologists lose their patients when they start with their big, multisyllabic words of what's going
14-letter
on.
Latin works.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
here's step 7 as an example and of the book, and it's learning to use a white cane. And there's 12 steps throughout the whole book of different ideas and helpful hints and skills that can be acquired, and it's just marvelous. And so, are there other books planned in the series?
Yes, my next book, I'm hoping, this market was definitely the family or the visually impaired patient themselves, because there's nothing for them. Eye doctors just say, come back in a year and maybe I'll have something, but you're on your own now, you're legally blind or whatever. And I just thought a little bit of support. And in the back of the book is a resource book of or resource list of national places where they can get started in regards to what services they're entitled to. But I'm glad you selected that one, Deidre, because that's got to be the biggest problem. Because what happens is, and I had it all under one step when I wrote this book, and then I changed it and I put the whole issue of mobility, making the best decision for yourself. I put it into 3 steps because it's so important. Because if you don't become a safe traveler, even if it means going on the arm of a sighted guide, which of course is another way of being mobile, but if you don't, you eventually become isolated, you become a shut-in, you get depressed, and you're probably going to lose years off of your life because you're not living a fulfilled life as you should. And so I strongly urge people to deal with that issue early on so that...
Balance themselves.
Right. And I think that the whole idea of getting the family involved and realizing that a disability is a family issue and not an individual issue. But I think even more important than that is the whole issue of mobility and staying on your feet and getting out and getting about and
Just
doing
as you're,
the things you used to do.
I'd like to bring up the book that your father wrote, The Other Side of the War, which presents some humorous stories about the war. And then, Elena, do you have a book planned about the humorous side?
She does.
yeah.
She does.
And
Actually, I do, yeah. What was I going to call that?
Lightening Up on Blind?
Lightening up on, yes,
I like
yeah,
blind
because,
ones.
a lot of times when we're, and Lynn's been at meetings when we've done this, when us blind folk get together, and we start telling funny stories like brushing your teeth with Braille cream or putting hairspray under your arm thinking you grabbed the deodorant, and we just said, we should do, because it can be very funny. And you really must learn to laugh at yourself. When you've laughed at yourself, the rest of the world's a piece of cake.
That's right. That's right. And laughter and smiles, they carry us through all kinds of adventures.
Right.
And,
Contagious.
yes.
But I'm really hoping that the book after that becomes the textbook in the colleges, because it's going to be much more serious material than what these are about.
We're going to transition over to your father's book, The Other Side of War. These are publishing Youngdahls we're talking about here. And this is one that Doretta helped him compile, and they're marvelous stories of World War II. And I have the first photo here of Herbert when he was just a tad. And,
He was.
How old was he when he entered the service, Doretta?
16.
16.
Well, he entered the Iowa National Guards, and that was before the war was declared, and they really didn't care. Just come to the meeting, and so I look at that picture of him, and I think, oh, merciful heavens.
He looks so young.
And we were going together, hot and heavy.
Well, sure.
At that age,
Right, because that's junior high.
Yeah.
And then we have a picture of a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun that turned out to be just a little bit too small. Look at that tiny little, tiny. It was just, it said, when we first met the enemy, it proved too light for the job. And you can see the barrel on that is not very wide at all. And it's on balloon tires. And then we have a picture of Sarge and a Volkswagen Scout car. It had balloon tires, and he was in North Africa, it looks like, in that picture.
Like Rommel.
Right, so that's why there's no shirt. It's hot. Right, so this is a t-shirt with a helmet on, though, for safety. And the last picture we have is he was honored as Best in Parade at the Presidio of San Francisco in 1957.
He's an officer.
He's an officer there because he went up through the ranks and became an
He went from a
officer.
buck private to the company commander in 23 years.
My, that is quite an
So he would tell
accomplishment.
his men, Now, don't even go there and tell me that alibi, because I used that myself.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. He was something else.
Yes, yes. What was one of your very favorite war stories?
Oh dear. Oh, I love now, having gone to all these different countries and
Yes.
and studied their customs and their monies and all that. And now I can sit and watch TV and think, I had lunch sitting right there.
Yes.
But he'd always say, sit with your back to the building and be ever watchful.
Right.
What's going on.
His training.
And we watched a
Right.
robot come up the street
Oh.
and search a car for bombs in Haifa
Oh
by
my.
Jerusalem.
Oh my.
So sometimes it would get a little scary.
Well, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some traveling in the Middle East, and I know it's culturally, beautiful and amazing place and so historic, but there are other aspects to it that are frightening.
Right. The holy wars will
Yes.
never be resolved, in my estimation.
Yeah, it's so complicated.
It'll be, and we all worship the same God.
One wonders.
Yeah.
Lynn, do you have any publishing in your plans in the future?
Oh, I'm not the publisher. I'm the
Okay.
editor.
The editor. Oh, that's the hard job.
I'm the one with the eyes.
That's the hard job.
I do publishing, and I know I'm getting older, but she did tell me the other day, you used to be one of the best editors I've ever had, but not so much anymore. Whoa, take your job somewhere
I
else.
said that or Mother said
You
that?
did.
Oh, I don't remember saying that.
Elena also has another book that she's publishing in Braille and large print, and I'm doing the large print version of Christmas carols.
Marvelous.
Right,
Yeah.
so-
Yeah, that one's actually on the market. Well, the large print isn't yet, but the Braille is.
Right.
And the other book will be 12 Steps to Living with Total Blindness.
Right, that's
Yes.
another one of my
Right.
books. I
That's
just
right.
got to get this one out so that I can get to my other ones.
That's great. Now,
Right.
either book and the future books can be purchased through Doretta
right.
at 650-359-3866. Just give Doretta a call, and she'll talk to you all about how to acquire any of these books.
Right.
Yes, that's wonderful. So so now we have going on to what do you think the future will hold for the Youngdahl family, Lynn?
Well, I'll be very busy editing.
Yes.
There's a lot of, Elena will, it's like, for instance, to put the cover here, for me to be able to pull that up and go and have the cover. A lot of the more visual type jobs that I'll be working very closely with her. I did tell her on her Christmas book that I felt like I should start my Christmas shopping now, because
Yeah.
as I proofread, I was singing these Christmas carols
Yeah.
to make sure the words were correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we've worked very closely together for a long time. We just have pretty much a knack for doing that.
I have a client that does 4 performances with their church every year,
Yes.
and she always sends me her stuff to be brailled. She's a blind lady in our town.
Yes.
And I find the same thing. I start working on her stuff, and the next thing you know, I'm singing "Amazing Grace," how
Yeah.
sweet and stuff. Anything that I'm proofreading or brailing winds up coming
Sure.
out.
Right.
She has the big Braille embossers in her home.
Oh my.
Oh my, yeah.
Yes.
You could hear them.
Oh,
It's
and-
very loud.
Yeah.
Oh.
A year ago, we moved in. We bought a home, and we moved next to a motorcycle repair guy. And he came over and he said, I said, "Do you think your motorcycles are loud? Wait till you hear my embossers." I said, "We're going to get along just fine."
Yes.
He told me your answer to prayer.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
A neighbor that makes noise.
Yeah, yeah, more than me, actually. That's
Oh.
pretty amazing, because usually they complain.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So-
what are some of the carols that are in the book? Which ones?
I- actually,
all the standard.
they're all the standard, but they're ones that you may have trouble with the lyrics because you don't hear them all that, once a year.
Green
By
sleeve.
the end of the season, then you remember them, but at the beginning
Right.
of the season. And it's a book you can take to church, or you can take to a social gathering, or you can take out Christmas caroling, because it, you know, it has all the second and third and fourth verses.
Oh,
and,
those are wonderful.
And yeah, we also do, my business, we do some karaoke books.
Oh, no.
We have one that's got, you know, Garth Brooks and the Carpenters and some of the traditional songs if you go out to a karaoke bar.
Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear that.
You could take that, you could take the book with you and have your, you know, your own lyrics, because you can't see the lyrics like most people that go out
Right.
to do karaoke, they can see them.
Right.
And of course blind people can't, so we do that. But we
That's
do
great.
just about everything in Braille. We're developing a new large print Braille food label program for being able to mark your cans in your boxes when you bring them
Right.
home from the grocery store.
Good idea.
And yeah.
Yeah,
It takes a
And-
long time when she goes
Sure.
grocery shopping to mark her food.
sure.
Tell her about your son,
What about percent?
when you lived alone with your son.
Oh, and my little boy was 3 years old. And I never used to mark my cans. I'd either put them in alphabetical order or whatever. And I'd say to him, okay, you know, I want you to get me this. And so this one day when I was living up in Daly City and going to San Francisco State, I said to him, I want you to get Mama a can of green beans, as he would call them.
Yeah.
And so he was so little, he'd get into the cupboard and slide the cans around until he found the green beans.
Right.
And this one day, he brought up the can and got on the stool to watch me, and he's leaning over and watching me to open this can. And all of a sudden, I opened the can, and he started laughing. And it wasn't green beans, it was fruit cocktail. And he's, because he loved fruit cocktail.
Well, sure.
And he goes, I joked you, Mommy, I joked you. And from then
did you?
on, I
What a
started
great
marking my
story.
cans, because I couldn't trust him. after
Elena, I
that.
could listen to these stories all night long, but unfortunately,
I
we
know.
need to wrap it up. And I just want to thank you, all of you, for coming and bringing Tahoe and just giving us such a wonderful stories about your family. This is the history of Pacifica. It's the amazing Youngdahls. And I know it sounds like trapeze artists, but you are artists of another kind. And so I really, really appreciate your joining us this evening.
Thank you,
We'd
Deidre.
also, you're welcome.
thank you.
We'd also like to thank the Pacifica Historical Society for having this wonderful way of preserving our history. If you'd like to get involved with the Pacifica Historical Society and our many projects, our address is P.O. Box 752, Pacifica, California 94044. And our website is www.pacificahistory.org. Remember, the Pacifica Coastside Museum is now open on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 1 to 4. Thank you for watching our show, and let us always remember the words of Frank Winston as he quoted Longfellow. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time.